Hello, I'm Kimberly Parnell, and you are listening to Engaging Texas Families, a podcast from the Parent and Family Engagement Statewide Initiative of Texas. Let's jump into today's episode. Good morning. On today's episode of Engaging Texas Families, our guest is Todd Nesloney. Todd, thank you for joining us today. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, as well as what you're doing now?
Yeah, thank y'all so much for having me on. This is a topic that's super close to my heart, so I'm super pumped to be here. I'm Todd Nesloney. I have served as an instructional aide who became a teacher, who became a principal, and now I get to work as the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at the Texas Elementary Principal Association, also known as TEPSA.
Awesome. Such a great experience that leads into all kinds of things, education and parent and family engagement. How do you view the administrator's role in supporting and promoting parent and family engagement?
You know, I love this question so much because I think the administrator plays a vital role in making sure that the events that are planned and the thoughts and the processes that are put into them are well thought out and really reflect the families that you serve in your community. And so when I became principal at the school that I was hired for, the very first job that the district tasked me with was increasing parent engagement. And so that became a very important piece of my role. And something that I learned about throughout my year, but also learned that it's not just my job. I think the administrator plays a vital role, but like with any other task, nothing is solely your responsibility. Leaning on those around you and the expertise they bring allow you to grow those events into even more successful opportunities to connect with families.
Absolutely. And as an administrator, what are some strategies that you recommend to support classroom teachers in fostering parent and family engagement?
Yeah, so I think just being in the know of what's popular right now, how teachers can connect with students and families. I think sometimes we assume just because somebody became a teacher, they know all the ins and outs of what to do. And so I felt like it was really my role as an administrator to lead the way in that learning. And so as I was educating myself over ways to really reach parents, ways to break down barriers, as I was seeing things in conversations I was having, I shared those with my staff. And I allowed them to say, hey, you know, this might be an idea to try. Hey, we're putting this program into place, and here are all of the reasons why. We're not just trying to check a box, but we're trying to meet needs. And when we focus on that being the end-all, be-all goal, is what needs are we going to meet? We saw that our events became much more successful and a much higher buy-in, not only from the parents and families, but also from the staff, because they understood the value and the thoughtfulness behind it, but they also understood that they played a role in that event being successful, whether that is communicating with those families about the event, whether that is the way they communicate with families on a daily basis. If the families don't like the way the teacher's communicating, they're not going to come to an event that the administrators planned. And so it just takes all of us really diving into and understanding that we all play a role. And what is our role to make this event or this engagement lead to success?
Awesome. With that in mind, do you have any advice for education professionals on one action that they can take to improve parent and family engagement?
Yeah, I mean, for me, a hard lesson I learned was that the way that I was raised is not the way everybody's raised. And that may sound really simple, but what I often share is, you know, when I became an administrator and started planning these events and encouraging families to attend, and I wasn't seeing an uptick in attendance. I wasn't seeing things change, even though there was great intention behind the planning. There was a lot of money spent, time, effort, everything. And initially, my thought was, well, goodness gracious, I guess these parents don't value their kids' education. Because if they did, they'd be here. Because of all this work we're putting into it, like there's so much value. And then I had to take a step back and go, wait, why is that my initial thought? Why is my initial thought, oh, they must not care about their child's education? And when I stopped to reflect, I went, oh, I'm thinking that because that was my experience. I was raised by a single parent who was at everything I did, and she always told me, I'm here because education's important. You will graduate. You will do these things. I'm going to be here to show you that I'm going to support you in this. And so that's just the way that I was raised. And sometimes I think we get in these mindsets that we don't even realize that our initial thoughts about things are just based on our own experience, which is not the experience of everyone. And just because it was your experience doesn't make it the right experience or the wrong experience. And so when I took that reflection in place and go, okay, you know what? I'm not going to think negatively right away and go, oh, well, these parents just don't value education. I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk to them. And that was game changing. When I just went out to where parents lived, I went in the car rider line, I went on bus routes, I did all types of things, and I just talked to families and said, you know, we'd love for you to be at this, or we noticed that a lot of people don't come to these. Do you hear in the community, like, what's going on, what's happening? And we try to really understand our specific community and see what was the one thing or multiple things that were standing in the way. And time again through those conversations, for us, three things kept arising. The first was that people didn't have a working car. I didn't realize how many families in my community just didn't come just because they couldn't get there. The second one was they worked multiple jobs. I know from having a single parent of a parent who works multiple jobs. But a lot of these parents were like, look, with the day and age we live in now, I have to work these jobs to put food on the table. I love my kids. I'm so glad they're in that Christmas program, but food on the table is a little bit more important, and my boss isn't giving me the time off. And finally, what I always tell people that the most shocking answer, that was our number one most repeated answer in our community, was, look, I dropped out of school in middle school or high school, and it's just way too painful to walk back on those campuses. And once we had that perspective as an administrative team, but also sharing that with my staff, we completely changed the way we looked at events. And we could say, you know what? There are some changes we can do to make this meet those needs. We can get out there where they are for some of these events. We can go to them. And when we started doing that, because we had talked to them, we saw parent engagement begin to flourish. And so I think that advice of just, and it sounds so simple, but that advice of just talking to someone and listening, having them share their story, and not just, hey, you don't come to anything. Why don't you come? Like, obviously, we all know you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So you want to bring the kindness and you want to bring the empathy and just say, hey, you know what? We're trying to build these great events, and what would bring you in? What's keeping you from being at more than what you're going to? And what can we do better? Where all the focus is on us. Tell us what you want us to do for you. And then we can take that information and try to make these events be the most successful they can be. But it goes down to that, getting to know people at the human condition. And that includes your staff, getting to know them too, and seeing why they aren't being more supportive of events, and why your staff aren't attending more of these engagements and volunteering, and being really understanding that life happens and that people have all sorts of things in the way, and how can we remove barriers to lead to success.
Absolutely. You know, I think sometimes we don't give enough emphasis on the relationship with our parents, and the value that plays in the role. Like, it is very easy to think negatively initially when if we just believed the best of everybody and their intentions and built a relationship with our families, how much leverage that would give us moving forward.
You're exactly right. Because as educators, we focus so heavily on the relationship with the students.
Right.
But that relationship with their family is important as well, and we can't forget that.
Absolutely. Well, Todd, we like to close every episode of our podcast by asking our guest, what is one thing that you have seen someone do in the area of parent and family engagement that has left a lasting impact on you, either as a parent or a professional?
I think one thing that was really important to us whenever we did a parent and family engagement event was to really consider what we're calling that event. That has always been a passion of mine and something I talk quite heavily about is, what are you naming the event, and does your name become exclusionary? So are you making sure people don't feel like they're welcome because of just a simple title? An example I would use is one of the things that we did as a campus is we quit calling events Muffins with Moms or Donuts with Dads. Now, we still did those events because they're great events to get family and community in. But we just changed the title because Muffins with Mom is fantastic. Let's celebrate those relationships with the families. But when we call it that title, we're sending a very exclusionary message of, if you're not a mom, you cannot be here. I don't care if you play the role in that child's life. You can't be here because this is Muffins with Mom. And so we just started thinking about, what can we call these things? So, for example, Donuts with Dad, we got rid of that title, not the event, and we called it Dinner with a Gentleman. So instead, we could say, you know what, bring any gentleman in your life, whether that's your brother, your dad, your uncle, your children's pastor, your neighbor down the street. It doesn't matter. This is an event for us to celebrate the men in your life. Or Tea with a Lady. Or instead of Grandparents' Day, we started calling it Grand Friends Day, so that as an elementary school, we could bring your stuffed animal, or you could bring family, or any of those kind of things. But the grandparents are still invited. And so it's not that we want to remove these events. It's, can we rethink the name to make even more people feel like, I want to be there because I belong there?
I love that. Todd, thank you so much. You have shared so much wisdom and knowledge today, and we appreciate you joining us today on our podcast.
No problem. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Thanks so much.